And this was hardly a shock, but Robin Roberts has told the world she is gay. The Good Morning America co-anchor, who's been battling cancer and other medical ailments, made the disclosure in a Facebook posting saying, "I'm grateful for my entire family, my longtime girlfriend Amber, and friends as we prepare to celebrate a glorious new year together." President Obama, as you may recall, chose Roberts for the 2012 interview in which he announced his support for same-sex marriage.
Mr. President, are you still opposed to same-sex marriage?
I've been going through an evolution on this issue.
But, Mr. President, it's not being worked out on the state level. We saw that Tuesday in North Carolina, the 30th state to, in essence, ban gay marriage.
What's striking to me is that Robin Roberts seems to have barely caused a ripple. There weren't a lot of follow-up stories about this. Are we at the point where these announcements are simply no longer big news?
I think it depends on the news week and the cycle. It could be that we were over the holidays that it didn't make as big a splash. But I think it speaks well of the country that a lot of people go, oh, neat, moving on with my Christmas shopping or whatever else I'm doing. And I think that probably is the style we're going to see more in the future. And I like when people sort of drop it in conversation. Zachary Quinto, the actor, did that as well. Just sort of when you're in an interview, boom. And then everybody sort of goes, what?
It's a parenthetical clause. Yes. Let me play for you, Kelly, some comments by CNN anchor Don Lemon, who came out several years ago, and he addressed why he hadn't done it sooner.
I didn't do it sooner because I was afraid of losing my livelihood. I was afraid that you would no longer watch me.
Is that still a realistic fear? I mean, a lot of people assume Robin Roberts was gay, just as they assumed Anderson Cooper was gay before he confirmed that. But if you're an anchor trying to appeal to the broad spectrum of America, and there's still a lot of people out there who are opposed to homosexuality or think it's a sin, is that a realistic fear these days?
It depends on where you are. I was actually the first African-American journalist that Don gave an interview to when he came out.
You were?
And yes, and it was actually interesting because it shows how far we've come in actually 2 years, which is that he came out in a memoir. There was a publicist coordinating the rollout. The New York Times got an exclusive. I mean, it was treated like a major announcement. And this time, it wasn't quite Ellen DeGeneres 16 years ago on the cover, "Yep, I'm gay," of Time magazine, but it showed that it still was treated with great care. And the fact that 2 years later, someone, at his level can just do it in a Facebook post does show how much the country's evolved. One last thing I wanted to say when I wrote about Duck Dynasty for the Daily Beast, Howard, is half of our country still opposes gay marriage, but 59% of Americans say they have no problem with gay relationships. They find them morally acceptable. So we've moved a lot. I do think, though, if you're an anchor possibly in the Deep South, in a really conservative area, it could still be a problem.
So it is possible. I mean, Sam Champion, who was the weather guy on GMA, he came out. I mean, I don't know, GMA's still #1 in the ratings, but is it possible that it does turn off a portion of the audience, and that's why, like in the case of Don Lemon, it's being done in a kind of a low-key fashion, not on camera, for example?
No, I think that, yes, as you said, it could turn off a certain amount of people, but it doesn't seem to make that many waves anymore when you do come out. And it isn't the cover of People, and it isn't this big rollout. It just sort of is.
Right. I mean, she was already gay. She's just sharing it with the world. But what about that interview with President Obama, which was specifically, she was picked by the White House so he could reverse his position on same-sex marriage? Did she have some obligation to tell the audience that she is gay and therefore might have a certain view on this issue?
Absolutely not. What if I interview the Pope? That means I have to say that I'm Catholic? No. And secondly, the story isn't about her at that instance. The story is about President Obama's views and what he thinks about gay marriage. She would never get an interview with him again if she trumped him and said, oh, by the way, I'm gay. What do you think about that?
And could it be that some of the style of doing this and doing it a little bit more casually and parenthetically is, look, I'm an anchor, I'm many things, and this is not my entire identity, but I want you to know about it.
Okay.
As opposed to doing a book and a made-for-TV movie.
Can I also say that I think this goes back to the Phil Roberts and Duck Dynasty debate, which is there are a lot of people who feel like, I don't have to agree with you on gay marriage, I also just don't need to hear about your politics. And I think that there are people who feel that way. And so for them, some of those people, I was reading the comments, Howie, on news outlets, there are a lot of people who said, I'm a devout Christian, she's a great anchor, I could care less.
Right.
But they might care if the person's like, I'm on People magazine, I'm going to become an advocate, I'm going to become an activist, and I want to tell you about it all the time.
That's the key word. If you're perceived as an advocate, that might be different than just saying, hey, by the way, this is my personal life, I happen to be gay. Let's go to the weather.
Although a GLAAD representative did say that this is very positive outcome for the LGBT community, especially the ones of color, because they are not represented on television in the way that others are.
And Don Lemon was one of the first African-American TV personalities to go that route. All right, Mary Catherine Ham, Kelly Goff, thanks very much for stopping by this Sunday. Up next, The New York Times under fire for an investigative report on Benghazi, but is the criticism politically motivated?
I won this 55-inch TV for less than $30 on DealDash.com.
I got this $1,200 computer for $100.71.
These aren't actors, they're real people who got real savings at DealDash.com, the fair and honest bidding site.
On DealDash, I got this $349 mixer for less than $25.
iPads sell for as little as $5. Laptops